Alright folks, today I'm going to show you how to make a coil pot that you can put into the oven and cook with. So we are starting with Dover white clay, which is a grogged clay. Let me put you guys in focus here, sorry about that. Dover white is a grogged clay, and grog are particles, basically, kind of like sand, that are put into clay to help with thermal expansion. So when you put things in an oven, the molecules contract and expand, and so you can't not put regular clay in the oven. It's not meant to handle that thermal expansion. That is why we use grogged clay for bakeware, anything that's going to go into an oven. The grog particles that are in the clay, sometimes we have grog in the clay, sometimes we have sand in the clay, actual sand, and they allow for this thermal expansion that's really important in bakeware. So I have about 4 pounds of clay here, and I'm just prepping it as we always do, 2 directions, both sides. The goal is to make a pot that is a serving dish that you can put into the oven that is made of coils and then smoothed out. So I have various base templates for you. That's this section here, your base. I have this one that was used for this pot. If you want to go square, I've got a square right here. And then your other option, if you want a circle, is to use one of these templates that we have, these molds that we have, the 11-inch. No bigger than 11-inch, no smaller than 11-inch. Remember that the clay is going to shrink, right? So I'm going to actually go with this 11-inch circle this time around. So I'm going to put it way off to the side so that I can save as much of this clay as possible and use it for my coils. I'm going to hold this down and I'm going to come around with the knife and I'm going to cut the mold on the larger side, not on the smaller side. Notice I'm holding this mold down so it doesn't move as I cut. Okay, make an out cut, boom. And then this clay will be saved. I'm going to make coils out of this clay. I want them to stay moist. It is incredibly, incredibly important that you put this clay, this remainder clay, in here, in a bag, and spray it so that it stays workable for you. Make sure you close that bag up. Alright, so I'm going to take this mold off now. And what I have is this really beautiful circle. As always, I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to smooth my edges, because remember, in ceramics you don't want any sharp edges. Sharp edges when fired turn into very, very sharp edges. So you always want to make sure you can use your fingers or you can use a sponge. Either way is fine. Okay, so there we go. Alright, very good. I'm going to set this off to the side just a little bit right there, and I'm going to go into my bag and I'm going to start making coils. So you don't have to have your coil all in one. You can have your coil come in parts of 2, and then you can connect them. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Remember that when you roll a coil, your fingers are open, your hands are moving back and forth, because you want to make sure that your coil is even in thickness. We're going to roll these coils fairly thick, but they want to be even and they want to be round. So I'm only putting pressure when my hands move out. Bring this guy back in here. And I'm going to begin right on the edge. I'm going to score this up all along the edge. When I'm doing this kind of edge, I use the small part of my rib, my serrated rib. Scratch really well. I'm going to flatten this a little bit, not by a lot, and I'm going to stand it up. I'm going to score the top edge. Make sure you stand it up and score the top edge. You could, if you wanted to, you could make a bunch of coils ahead of time, but you just have to make sure that you put them in plastic so that they don't dry out. If you're working on a board, so if you're working at one of the tables 1, 2, and 3, you'll need to use a slab mat so your clay doesn't stick to the table. I would suggest, even if you are not working at tables 1, 2, and 3, so the scored part, this is my scored part right here. I'm going to rescore. Boom. It's going to come down onto the scored base. I'm going to place it right to the edge, making sure that I'm right to the edge, and push down a little bit so it starts to stick. Okay, and like I said, you don't need to make one giant coil. You can use a couple of coils and attach them. You just have to make sure and attach them properly. So here I am. I start by making a sausage in the air, and then I put my clay down on my board and I start to roll out a coil. These want to be, again, fairly even coils. You don't want to go up too fast with a super thick coil, but we're also, it's not a support coil, so they're much thicker than a support coil. So I'm trying to get the thickness about the same size as the one I already laid down, so I think I'm kind of there right there. I'm going to flatten it a little bit, not a lot. Stand it up and score the top. Add a little slip. Rescore, and we're ready to attach. So when you're using two different coils, what you want to do is you want to overlap. So I'm going to bring you guys in a little bit closer. And show you what I mean by overlap. I'm also going to make sure that this little side camera can see what's happening. There we go. I'm going to turn this so that it's facing my camera. All right, great. Oop. There, perfect, perfect. So you want to overlap your coil. So here it is, setting it up, overlap it, and cut through both coils at a diagonal. Try not to cut through your base. And now these two coils will connect. See that? I want to make sure to score, and then add a little slip, and then connect them. I'm just pushing them together. There we go. And then I want to smooth them in completely, so I usually support the inside, smooth the outer connection, smooth the top, smooth the inside, and now that coil is one solid piece. So I'm going to do it again over here. Overlap, cut through both coils at a diagonal. Try not to go through your base. Take those extra pieces out. This is a little bit too big. There we go. Make a slight adjustment. Okay. Score. Add some slip and connect. Push it together and use your rib. Support the inside when you're smoothing on the outside. Support the outside while you're smoothing the inside and the top. All right, once you have this first coil laid down, I'm putting my clay away so it doesn't dry out on me. There's my clay, and I'm spraying it again so it stays moist. And now it's time to connect this bottom coil to the base. So I'm going to take this wooden knife, and again, I'm going to use this scoop part right here, the back side of it, and I'm going to start coming down to connect. You want to support your outside while you're pushing down and connecting that first coil. This is super important because this is basically what's going to set up the strength of your connection, right? So that first coil connection is super important. Make sure you bring it down all the way around on the inside and the outside. We're going to hit this with the rib in just a minute. And I'm just coming down, always supporting the outside. Coming down so that both parts of the clay meet. We're there. And now I'm going to go ahead and use my rib. And I'm going to begin smoothing that connection out with the corner tip of my rib. Make sure you're supporting the outside of this clay coil. Let me get my hands in the way here for a second. And there we go. Don't forget that your fingers are the best tools that we can use, right? You also want to make sure that you are smoothing your outer edges as well. Make sure that that's connected well. Keep an eye on it. All right. This is one of the reasons that you want to put it on a banding wheel, is so that you can move it around a little easier. And not a banding wheel, a slab mat, so that you can move it around a little easier and it doesn't stick to your table. Okay, there we are. I'm going to show you in the next video how to make the next connection and start building upwards.